Hi guys, so this live stream is started because I had the idea that I wanted to, because I was going to this Bible study at my college, but no one showed up. So I had the idea that I would want to share it with someone, and I thought about family, girlfriend, friends, but ultimately I decided, how about I just put this out on the internet, and hopefully it helps someone out there who might be struggling with something that we're going to talk about. So, what I was going to go over today was the Prodigal Son story, specifically the first part, up until it talks about the older brother. So, for the Bible study, I was going to do these handouts, which I've been doing for this Bible study every other week. This way, I've given the people who came a handout with like an introduction, the text, some questions to reflect on, and then some personal questions to relate it to your own life, and then just to take on message. That's what I'm going to do today, is I'm going to go through all that with you, and hopefully it can help someone out there. So starting with the introduction, it reads, Prodigal Son, if you don't know for context, it's Luke 15 verses 11 onwards. And so the context is it's in Luke 15 in the Bible. This is in ancient Israel. And this is a parable that Jesus is telling to two groups, the tax collectors and a group of sinners. Those are two very different groups. One of them is very externally holy. They're all about actions, all about pleasing the world. And then the group of sinners is there just to listen, to hear what Jesus has to say. They're earnestly looking for someone to help them. And so, sorry for the noise. So, the introduction reads, earlier in Luke 15, we read, quote, the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. The tax collectors worked for the Romans. They were bad people according to the Jewish leaders. Meanwhile, the Jewish leaders stayed far away from people like that. They complained, this man, meaning Jesus, welcomes sinners and eats with them. It's in verse 2. Jesus responded by telling three parables, three stories. And this one begins, there was a man who had two sons. The younger said to his father, give me my share of the estate. In verse 12. An estate is everything that someone owns, such as land and animals, and it is usually divided at one's death. So the fact that the son asked for his inheritance means that he basically wished that the father was dead. He wanted the wealth and the property and the animals and all of the money without actually wanting the father. And we'll talk about the message a little more as we get deeper into this, but let's go. So the opening question is, what would happen in your culture if a son asked his father for this? So growing up in the US, I would say it would be an odd question, but there wouldn't be much of a weird reaction, much of like a negative reaction to it. I think most parents would be just like, oh, you want your inheritance? But, okay, that's kind of weird. We're still here. But all right. And I feel like if I was a father and my son asked me for an inheritance, I would react a little differently. I'd say, why? Or am I not enough? Is my parenting not enough? Do you not want to live under my roof where you're safe and well fed and clothed and loved? And I feel like my reaction would maybe represent quite a lot of cultures, where I feel like most people would take it as an insult if their child asked for their inheritance before the parent was actually dead. I feel like most people would be a little disappointed that their children want that from them. It's like, so you want my belongings more than you want me. It kind of hurts. And so I guess if you're watching this, you could go back and just comment what would happen in your culture, and I'd love to go read through those and see what people think. See maybe what other perspectives there are in the world, because I'm always wanting to learn about other people. All right, so now we're going to get into the text. I need to stop looking at the count of people watching. It's not important. What's important is me here sharing the word with you. Sorry, that was a little aside. So I'm about to read Luke 15, verses 11 to 24. And this is actually telling the story of the prodigal son. So before we get into this, there's some things I want to focus your attention on. So as I read, please pay attention to the people, asking yourself as I go through this, what are they like? How do they interact with each other? And in this, we're specifically going to be looking at the father and the prodigal son. So just focus on those two and how they talk to each other, how they act, etc. All right, so starting verse 11. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, a couple days later, the younger son got together all that he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in reckless living." So basically, he used up all the money and property he had been given and wasted it on partying, money, gambling, women, friends, just things that the Bible would say are maybe not so good for people. Not all of them. It's good to have fun, have friends, but not good to wastefully or make an idol of those things. Not to wastefully spend your time and money and energy on those things when you could be focusing on loving them and loving God. So, as we continue, after the son had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country. So not very good timing. Famine hits right as he runs out of money. And so the son began to be in need, or almost going on the streets, begging. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country that he ran to, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. Now, pigs were very unclean animals. They were, it was a very bad job if you were feeding any animals, let alone pigs, which were ceremonially unclean. I mean, you could talk to any Jewish person and they would tell you pork is not really good in the Old Testament. And then there are even Christians who don't eat pork because they still think we go by that. So he was sent to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach even with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. So he's in a very bad situation. I mean, he's poor, he's broke, he has no food, no house, he's just feeding pigs, and he's so desperate that he's even willing to eat what the pigs are eating, comparing himself to a pig. It's a very sad situation to be in. So he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I'll set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and sinned against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.'" So here he is saying, he's coming to his senses. He's realizing how good he had it, and that it was so good that even if he was a servant, a slave to his father, that would be better than being here feeding the pigs. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long ways off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. Now, what a nice ending to this story. I mean, it seems almost unfair to us. We would think in our modern world, naturally, that if someone did this to you, they took a third of your wealth and just wasted it and then came to you apologizing, that most of us, I'm sure, would look at that and say, "Well, why should I forgive you? Why should I accept you back, even as a slave? You hurt me, you betrayed me." You need to see the consequences of your action. No, I don't want to be, don't even want to associate with you anymore. But the Father doesn't do that. The Father welcomes his son back. He even runs to him. He's looking for him, and he runs when he sees him far off. You know what this means? The Father saw him. He was looking. The Father must have been looking every day, knowing his son would return. So he waited, and he waited. And eventually he sees his son, and he doesn't just say, "Oh, I knew he'd be coming back. I told you all. I told you, slave, brother. I knew he was coming back." No, and he doesn't just wait, thinking, "I'll let him come to me. He wronged me. He needs to apologize." No, the Father runs to him, hugging him, kissing him. He loves him, truly. So he runs out to him, which is a very undignified thing to do in this culture that they're living in. It's very undignified for an older gentleman to run at all. And yet this man throws away all dignity to go meet his son and welcome him home. So they began to celebrate. That's how it ends. Now let's get to some questions to get you all thinking and for me to also share my point of view. So the first question is, why do you think the Father gave the inheritance money to his son? You can comment, or you can just reflect to yourself. I think the Father gave the money to his son in part because he loved him, and in part also because he wanted to teach him a lesson. I think there's, to some degree, with which you can say that the Father might have known what the Son wanted and what he wanted to do and what the Son wanted out of the money. And so he gave it to him. And he basically said, "Here, you can have it. You can use it how you want. I trust you." And he wanted to teach him a lesson that he maybe couldn't have learned at home, that he would need to get into this situation and learn where he was at fault, so that he could come back home. So I think the Father gave him the money because he wanted to teach him a lesson, because he loved him. He thought it wasn't worth an argument telling the son no, because I think he knew how the son felt about him. The son did not want his rules or his authority. The son did not want to live under the Father. The son wanted to go and be on his own. He wanted the freedom. He wanted all of the benefits of the Father's wealth without the hard work and the discipline that it took to have that and to live with his Father. How many times have we wanted the best out of something without any of the hardship? Question 2. It seems that the son did not remember his father until he was in trouble. How did his troubles help him come to his senses? I think this question is very relevant to an example that I think most people have, where we really don't come to our senses. We really don't want to listen or think deeper about something until something bad happens, until we experience the consequences of our actions. Oh, my phone is almost dead. No. Okay, so we can go through this quickly. So I think he realized that the money and the people that he were with weren't really there for him. It speaks that no one came to his aid when he ran out of money. Question 3 is, when the son came to his senses, he was finally able to see that living for himself had been wrong. He even prepared a speech. "Father, I have sinned against you in heaven." Sin includes both actions and attitudes. Now, try to use several words to describe the sinful attitudes the son had, and then describe the change that took place in him. Now, I think if I were to describe this, I would say the son misused the father's wealth and also mistreated his love and his trust, mistreated his grace. And the change was that the son changed his perspective. He changed because he saw the end result of his actions, being that chasing reckless living and wealth left him impoverished and desperate. How many times have we thought we were chasing something worth it, only to be disappointed or even left in the opposite situation to which we were chasing? So it left him impoverished and desperate, and he realized how good things were before. That even though he was living under his father, even though he had to live under the will of another man, how good he had it compared to the freedom which he thought he would love. Number 4, what kind of welcome do you think the son was hoping for? What kind of welcome did he receive from his father? Discuss the change in their relationship throughout the story. Now, I think the son was just hoping that the father would take him back as a slave. He knew that he had wronged the father, even proclaiming it himself, like he had sinned against the father and sinned against heaven. The son knew that he did wrong, and so he was just hoping for a chance that the father might take him back. But the father didn't do that. Instead, the father broke his every expectation and surpassed them. He embraced him as a son and told him, I will love you again. I've always loved you. So I will take you back. Even though you ran and you wasted my money and you betrayed me, I'll take you back with open arms. And put a robe on his feet, a ring on his finger, and sandals on his feet. Now, as to how their relationship changed, I don't think anything changed on the part of the father. The father seems to have always loved the son, doing what he thought was best for him. No, all that changed was the son's perspective. And I think that's like us. Because how many times have we realized that, talking to Christians, how many times have we realized that God was always perfect and he always wanted what was best for us and he always knew best? And we just had to realize that that was the truth and we'd reach a breakthrough. It's happened to me so many times where I was wrong and I didn't want to admit it. But the father was right. So the only thing that changed was the son's perspective. But the father always loved him. Hi, we're just going through the Prodigal Son, and now my phone's about to die, so I'm going through some questions to discuss it. If you know the story, please feel free to tell me. So now I'm on to a personal question. If you know the story, do you see yourself in any of these characters? The person left. Okay, I'll go back to normal. So do you see yourself in any of these characters? Are there similar attitudes or experiences? I'll say that I've definitely seen myself in the son, as you might have guessed from my other answers. I remember my childhood. I was certainly a rebellious child at times. I did not want to live under my father or his rules or my mom. I always wanted to do what I thought was best, which would often end in some pretty bad things happening. I also remember my walk in faith, where I've doubted God at times, or I thought that actions meant more than love. And at times I've even thought that I knew better than God, which it's not true, but it's a very easy thing to slip into. I think most Christians can find themselves in that situation where even though you say that you trust God and you believe in him and you know that he is better, you feel like you're in a position where you know it's best. I know it's best. I think that I know more than God. And usually that'll end in some pretty bad consequences. But every now and then you'll have God gracefully accept you back and not teach you the hard way, which can be very grateful for. Sorry, my phone's going to die, so I'm checking it. Next question. Can you relate this situation of the prodigal son to one that you've had today? What lessons are there in this text for our lives? So very recently, I know that I was trying to get into Netflix, and did I find an error yet? And is this for school or personal? So I'm going through the Prodigal Son. This is for personal interest. I was doing like a Bible study at my college, but no one showed up, so I thought I would go on YouTube with it. I'm going to try to answer questions quickly because my phone is going to die, and I want to try to answer you guys' questions. So did I find an error yet? I assume you mean in the Bible. I don't know if I've come across any errors that I've thought are worth thinking that it's not believable. Every error that I've come across has had an explanation that I think is satisfactory. All right, so back to the question: can you relate the situation to one you've had today? So for me, I wanted to log into Netflix, and for that, I had to get a code sent to my brother who owns it and wants to share it. And so in that, he thought somebody was trying to hack him into his account. I didn't tell him because I thought there was no harm, no foul. But it actually really worried him. And so what changed there was my perspective. My perspective on this thing changed, just like the prodigal son's perspective on living under his father changed. So, third question. What is Jesus trying to tell us about God with this picture? How is this different from your past picture of God? So I think in the story of the prodigal son that God is like the Father, where he loves us perfectly and almost unconditionally. The Father always loves us, and so he is unchanging. And all that changes is our perspective of that love. And so we can become as close to him. Oh no, my phone's going to die. Okay, I'll get this quick. All that changes is our perspective of God, because we are imperfect. We don't know everything. And so, but God does know everything. And at times he lets us make mistakes. He lets us mess up in order to teach us a lesson. And so that's the takeaway, is that I think sometimes God lets us mess up so that we can come to a better understanding of him, a better understanding of ourselves. And so my phone's going to die. I'll get to your question later. I'm sorry. I will come back and comment on this once I charge my phone. But thank you all for watching. Thank you for checking in and asking questions. I will comment back on this very soon.